Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Dirt 3. Let's get in here and start racing. So now we've unlocked Monster Energy, which is on this racetrack, the highest car you can have. And it has an objective bonus of 2,000. Whereas this Brembo racing team has an objective bonus of 2,250. And so this has to be some kind of DLC thing that has been giving me tons of extra objective bonuses from the beginning of the game. But okay, because of that DLC, I haven't been playing any of the other cars. And we're at level 26 now, and I saw one car that unlocks at 27, and otherwise I'm kind of done. Maybe we'll get up to 30 and find something else unlocks, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like it. I also looked at all the achievements, and there's quite a lot of them that I won't get. Just things like getting platinum trophies for everything, that's just not going to happen. Not in a reasonable amount of time, not with my level of skill. I came in as a bad driver, I'm going to leave this game as a bad driver. It would have been nice if the game had actually taught me to be a better driver, but I don't feel like it really has. I feel like on casual just lets you win and doesn't teach you anything. Ideally, Dirt 4 tutorializes players better, and you do leave Dirt 4 as a better driver, but here, not really. I guess I now know how to drift a little bit, and I now know how to do donuts, and I sort of know how to do spins, which I guess at the very beginning I didn't know any of that, but none of that really applies to racing like this. And honestly, for the limited number of tracks that we've seen, by the way, there are no new tracks. That was one of the achievements, is to race on all the tracks. So I've seen them all, according to the game itself. So for the limited number of tracks, they have reused the tracks too many times. They could have done some editing. They could have done some tightening up of the races. Make every race feel important instead of making them feel just kind of... They feel like grinding. Like you just have to grind through this race yet again to get to the next point, to get enough career points, which are different than the reputation points to unlock the season finale, season championship. I could use some storyline here too. It's not necessary for a racing game, but it would be nice if there was, you know, some kind of ridiculous Fast and the Furious style story that explains why I'm racing, what's my motivation, like why I need to get first place, why I need to win. Really, nothing says anything about that, so I have to make that all up in my head, and when I make up any story like that in my head, I'm just gonna say, well, I'm a video game player who wants to win. That's my backstory. It would help a little bit to have some characters that you actually cared about, and some actual struggle, going through a hero's journey of some sort. Right now, if you get bronze, in any of the races, it's kind of just fine. Like, I know I've been averaging first place on every single race up to this point on casual, but if I was just averaging bronze, nothing would have changed at all. Maybe some triangles wouldn't have turned gold, but I still would be in the exact same place. I'd still be doing this race if I had never gotten higher than a bronze. Which is to say the game's too easy, and that there's really no benefit of getting a bronze. Look at those spikes on the wheel to dig into the snow. I don't know if those are actually chains or if that's just the rubber. No, those look like snow treads. Like actual spikes. I don't know if this is the first time we've used the spikes or if I've just not noticed it up to this point. We haven't done a ton of buggy racing, so this may be the first time. Which might say that this is the first time that the animation of the snow tread tires has been used in the entire game. This game feels like it wanted to have a very active multiplayer base, and that's why there's so few tracks. But I just don't think that's gonna be. I think at best for a racing game, you're gonna have a moderately active multiplayer base, and that's it. Because racing games are just a niche. It's not your standard first-person shooter that most video game players play. So while multiplayer has to be there in a racing game, it's a requirement, and the local network and the split screen are very good features that should be there in all racing games. The single player seems to be slightly neglected and just stretched to cover for the fact that it's kind of neglected. Although, at the core of it, the lack of tracks is just the lack of tracks, whether the tracks are used in single player or multiplayer. We're not going to get into a multiplayer game and find out that there's 25 extra tracks that we haven't even seen. That would be ridiculous if that was the case. But the game looks good. I could be a lot more critical of this game if it looked awful. Like, if I wasn't dazzled by the pretty graphics, I could be way more critical. If this was a top-down 2D racing game with all of the same tracks and layouts and all the same features, just being top-down 2D 16-bit graphics or 8-bit graphics, I could probably hate this game a lot more. But the prettiness certainly helps. Making a game look pretty definitely helps.
Aspen was good to us.
But when you have a driver as talented as ours, every race is good to us.
But yeah, that's as much characterization as we get, as we have our two different people on either side of us saying nice things about us.
It's time for the Landrush World Tour. And guess what? You've been invited to compete.
That's right, mate. This is great news. You're really starting to be respected for your skills in this discipline.
Respect is fine, but love from the fans is what it's all about. Win this tour, and you'll be a bona fide Landrush icon.
Okay, so this is a little confusing now, because now this implies that this won't unlock. Unless this doesn't unlock because we didn't do something over here. the Gymkhana Sprint 1, which I can't do, or the Gymkhana Attack 1, which I can't do. So we have this cube, this small triangle. It's not a cube. It's a pyramid. And it's either never going to be unlocked because of not doing some of the things in this big triangle, or it's never going to be unlocked because I can't do this one. And if you look here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 races, and over here we have 1, 2 races. So somewhere between 4 and 2 races, and they're tournament races, so quite long races, are just never going to be able to play them. But we can play this, so let's do that. 27 to unlock this last truck, and we're almost to rank 27. Ideally, maybe what will happen is we can unlock everything.
Didn't need to fix much on the car.
Either
ready when you are.
After we do season 4, or we unlock everything after you get to level 30. Ideally, I'd say if you get to reputation 30, that should unlock everything. But at the same point, then my reputation should also be unlocking other things anyways. And it hasn't been up to this point. But if there was a system like that, then you could grind on the few races that you can pass and continuously get more and more reputation through grinding, instead of trying some of those Gymkhana attacks that I'm just not good enough at. And I have to blame the game, at least in part, for me not being good enough to do the tricks, because it just didn't do a great job of tutorializing me, or even having a good system to do tricks. Even with the casual mode enabled and having trick assist on, I'm still not able to do spins or donuts effectively and consistently. Notice that in this truck, the entire truck bed has been removed to give it a lighter feel, and only the sides and the framework, the cross bracing, has been left. And these things don't have license plates, of course, because they're not street legal. There are some famous cars throughout popular culture you could probably put in games like this. Like some of those cars from the James Bond series of movies would make sense, and to be nostalgic on that. You would want the Love Bug. That's kind of an older reference, so people may not get that. You would want the Mach-1 Z, is that what it is? In Speed Racer? The car from Speed Racer? Whatever it's called. Let's see. What are some other famous things? Batmobile, if you can get it in there for a cheap license. Get all the different versions of the Batmobile in your car game. You definitely want a limousine, a stretch limo, a yellow and white taxi from New York, maybe some of the black cars in the UK taxis, police cars, anything recognizable like that. driving around in a crane. This game even has cranes, and that would be funny to drive a race a car around in a crane. Just to have some silly things in there, if you can get them in there. Maybe you couldn't license the Batmobile. I would understand, but... And if you're not going to put the silly cars in there yourself, put in a customization thing so I can paint a car and make it look that way if I wanted to. I wonder, for Unity and Unreal engines, how much of a racing car game could you make through just default modules, and how much custom code do you have to put into it? Because I bet you could get moderately far on moderately less work making a racing car game in an Unreal Engine than compared to like a first-person shooter or an adventure game where you're going to have to program a lot more custom models and a lot more custom systems. Otherwise your game is going to be very commonplace with no special features. But if I could explain that better, let's see. What I'm saying is, a racing game, cars go forward. They accelerate, they deaccelerate, they spin, they turn. That's just assumed. In a first-person shooter game, your character might be able to double jump, might be able to triple jump, might be able to turn into a ghost and walk through walls. Those are not standard assumed abilities that you might have in a shooter game or an adventure game or any other style game where it's pretty much by the numbers. Standard things are expected for racing games. Even if this was, say, a Star Wars Episode 1 pod racing game, not too much changes. You just kind of don't animate the wheels or the effects of the wheels and have the pod racer fly in the air or look like it's flying in the air. Boy, did they try to push pod racing when that movie came out as a huge thing. And I'm in first position, and I've already won, and we're on lap 4, so now I'm out of things to say. I'm about to lap somebody. Ideally, you wouldn't want to drive in the water because you're losing grip. Every time you do that. In the same way, you wouldn't really want to do a jump and leave the ground because you're losing grip. And that means you can't accelerate. And you would like to consistently accelerate if you can. But with all the auto throttling and corner braking, you never really hit a top speed. You get limited into a strange top speed of about 60 or 70. That's why in my entire career here I'm barely averaging 53 miles per hour. Less than what you would hit as a regular person driving on the highway. Of course, highways are smooth and straight, and these roads are the exact opposite of that. Oops. And we've gone 20 minutes, not 30 minutes. For a second there I thought we'd gone 30. My clock is a little small. And a little far away. So this entire race is just the same tracks in a truck. Which I just feel like you could have just had that been an option. You could have just given me this rally, this entire race, and allowed me to pick any of the cars. And then if I so chose to do these races with different cars, then that's on me. Instead of forcing me to do the race with trucks. This game is really just overcompensating. It's literally overcompensating for having too few tracks. I don't know if literally is the right term there, but it feels like it. It's giving us the same tracks over and over again in different cut and pasted versions, as if we wouldn't notice, and making the game extremely longer than it should be. I should be done, honestly. I would be fine to be done with this entire game, and we're not even finished with season 3. There's an entire season and a half almost left. Plus we're doing all of this. Can I speed up the process any? Well, I could skip these races. I could not even try them. And that would speed up a little bit of time. But that's kind of all I could do. And I'm not sure I really want to do that, because I would like to know how many things I actually end up not unlocking by the time I'm done with season 4 and done with the game. Because there's definitely feels like there's some barriers that I cannot pass. I would like just an event where you go down a hill, a really steep hill, and then you go up a jump and you just see how far you can jump. Just as a challenge. And I would have liked some things like that to have unlocked a lot earlier. If they are gonna unlock, which they might actually unlock. We've seen some things unlock really late in the game that would have been more interesting to have earlier on in the game. And this music, they wasted money with the music. It's cool and all, but because it doesn't play while you're playing, it's just a waste of license money. Well, if I was gonna have to rewind, I don't have time to rewind now. That was a bad start. Can we recover from a bad start in 5 laps? I bet we can. And I am not doing well. And you have this kind of motivation to want to not use the rewinds even though they're there, because you get more rep for not using them. Even though it's a tiny amount of rep, it's more than you would get do anything else. Well, after the car challenges. Well, actually no, it's the smallest amount of rep you can get of all the different things you can do to earn rep. So, that statement was totally false. So now I'm on lap 2 of 5, and I'm in first position after having a terrible setup. I mean, look how easy that was. Like, I don't deserve to be in first place right now. Not at all. I crashed no less than 2 times at the very beginning, and haven't been driving particularly well. And yet, on casual, I am growing my lead in first place by the 3rd lap. Even if there were only 3 laps in this race, I still would have gotten first place. With that terrible performance. So that just kind of goes to show you how surprising it was when I a couple times didn't get first place in the race. Let's go ahead and rewind here. That was a pretty bad one, and that's gonna... Alright. Flashback. Now, there is something also to be said, I guess, about the flashback mode only giving you 5 flashbacks. That means if you were really, really bad, you still could lose. Or if you just don't hit the flashback button fast enough, which is more likely to happen. We're at lap 4, going on lap 5, and we've got one more lap, one more now boring lap through this rather long track. Which, isn't this the smelter again? It looks like the smelter. And having 3 different tracks in the same area just screams a lack of budget, or a lack of efficiency. See, what I imagine is happening here is they created a giant area called the smelter, put 3 racetracks around the central focus of the area, and then probably did a lot of cutting out of sections that you couldn't actually see from any of those 3 racetracks, when ideally I would prefer to have smaller areas with 1 racetrack and then move on to a different location that looks a little bit different. But also, all of that probably comes down to licensing things. I wouldn't be surprised if it did end up being the case that they licensed things like Speed Tree to automatically animate trees and things for them, and if they wanted different styles of trees, then they would have had to spend more money, and they didn't want to spend the money there. So I will again catch up, and do this one and see. This is just trucks or buggies are the only thing you could have picked on that. But this Gymkhana Attack 3 is right in line with Gymkhana Attack 2, which is interesting. So what unlocks this? So we'll do one more race here next time, and then we'll do the rally races, and then we'll be caught up, I think, hopefully, unless it unlocks something more, which it kind of needs to unlock something more. Anyways, that's it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on basically any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.